Karen's campaign escalated like a slow drip turned into a flood. Every morning, Marcus would wake to another envelope on his porch, sometimes slipped under his door, sometimes pinned to the mailbox like a warning. Citations for lawn edging. The shed's reflective surface, even the potential noise hazard of birds nesting nearby. The absurdity wasn't even hidden anymore. One afternoon, as he returned from work, he caught Karen measuring the distance between his garden hose and the sidewalk with a tape measure. She didn't flinch when caught. "You're 4 inches over the community guideline." Marcus tilted his head. "Guideline, not a rule." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We take guidelines very seriously." Word began spreading through the neighborhood. Some avoided Marcus, nowing nervously but refusing to stop for small talk. Others watched him from behind their curtains. Cedar Pines wasn't a friendly place anymore. It was a fishbowl, and Marcus had been marked. But not everyone kept quiet. A week later, he received an anonymous note slipped into his doorframe. It read, "You're not crazy. She's done this before. Last guy moved out in 6 months. Record everything." He didn't recognize the handwriting, but it was enough. Marcus installed security cameras around the perimeter of his house, silent, sleek, unnoticeable. He changed his Wi-Fi passwords. He bought a high-speed scanner and began digitizing every letter, every envelope, every mention of the word non. And he didn't stop there. At the next HOA meeting, he showed up early, sitting quietly in the corner while Karen held court in the center of the clubhouse, sipping mineral water and charming a few loyal board members with fake laughs and veiled threats. "Before we begin," she said sweetly, "I want to remind everyone that rogue structures will not be tolerated." The word rogue echoed in the room like a gunshot. People turned. Karen didn't look at Marcus, but her lips tightened. "The meeting," he overheard whispers. "Why is she always after him? He's got permits, doesn't he? Didn't she call the cops?" But Marcus didn't confront her. Not yet. He walked out slowly, deliberately, letting Karen believe she still had control. Back home, he played the audio file again, over and over. He knew he'd need more than a recording to expose Herkren was the kind who could twist reality into a pretzel and still land on her feet. But he also knew something else. HOA presidents weren't above the law. He dug into the charter. He printed every bylaw. He cross-referenced them with county zoning laws. He highlighted clauses, tabbed pages, and created a timeline of Karen's actions. One night, while reviewing financial reports he requested through a homeowner petition, he found something odd. A line item for landscape enhancement charge to Whitmore Maintenance LLC. His eyes narrowed. Karen's last name, a maintenance company registered to a P.O. box in the next town over. Marcus leaned forward. This wasn't about aesthetics. It never had been. This was about control, power, and possibly money. And she had just given him his first crack in the armor. He looked out the window toward the shed glowing softly under the moonlight. The symbol of everything she hated, let her hate it. Because soon, she'd be seeing a lot more of it, and she wouldn't be calling the shots anymore. She'd be answering for them. Marcus didn't sleep much the next few nights, not out of fear, but calculation. The scent of Karen's arrogance lingered in every document he read, every misfiled invoice, every redundant fine. She thought she had buried her tracks in bureaucracy. But Marcus knew systems, knew how to reverse engineer everything. He'd spent a decade auditing software architecture for a living. Compared to that, picking apart an overconfident HOA president's paper trail was almost insulting. In the Whitmore Maintenance Shell Company, it wasn't just a fluke, it was a keyhole, and Marcus had just found the master key. Using publicly available databases and corporate registration logs, Marcus traced Karen's LLC filings. 5 companies, all variants of the same name, all routed through the same forwarding address. She'd been quietly billing the HOA for years, monthly landscaping jobs no one remembered requesting, pressure washing sidewalks that had never looked, touched, mailbox alignment audits that somehow cost $4,000 a pop. He printed it all, not because he needed hard copies, but because he wanted to feel the weight of her fraud stack in his hands. But fraud wasn't enough. Not yet. Karen needed to be disarmed before she knew she'd been found out. That's when he reached out to Celeste, the neighbor who had slipped him the USB. An older woman with quick eyes and sharper instincts. She answered the door before he could knock, ushered him into her sunroom, and poured him black coffee without asking. "She's been like this since the day she got on the board," Celeste said, her voice low but clear. "Chased out 3 families in the last 2 years. One of them had a son with autism." Karen filed a complaint about the noises he made in the backyard. Marcus stiffened. "And no one did anything. We tried, but she keeps everything technical. No one understands the bylaws. She knows the county offices, has friends at zoning, threatens to expose violations if people talk. Some just gave up." Marcus took a long breath. "She's not going to like what I'm planning." Celeste leaned forward, a glimmer in her eyes. "Good." He told her about the shell companies, the forged invoices, the audio recording. Celeste listened, nodded, and then surprised him. "You need someone inside." "Inside? The next HOA board meeting is next week. I'll get you in, but it's closed to non-board members." Celeste smiled. "Not if you're on the agenda." That night, Marcus submitted a formal complaint about targeted enforcement and misuse of HOA funds with his full documentation attached. According to HOA bylaws, the president was required to address any formal resident complaint at the next meeting if submitted. 5 days prior, the clock started ticking. Over the next few days, Karen remained unusually quiet. No citations, no visits, no Lexus circling the block. Marcus knew that meant one thing: she'd caught wind of the incoming storm. On the morning of the meeting, he received a call from a restricted number. He let it go to voicemail. Karen's voice came through later. "Marcus, let's be reasonable. I'm sure we've had misunderstandings. No need to make this personal." He didn't respond. At 6 p.m., the HOA clubhouse lights flickered to life. The board filed in with their binders and bottled waters, settling into their positions. Marcus walked in last, shoulders relaxed, carrying a single manila folder and a small Bluetooth speaker. Karen froze when she saw him, but it was too late. He was on the agenda, and by the time he was done, Cedar Pines would never be the same. The room felt unusually humid. A dozen folding chairs lined the clubhouse's beige walls, and the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and lemon cookies. Karen sat at the center of the board's curved table, flanked by two members who avoided looking at Marcus. He was calm, collected, but he knew the next 10 minutes would shift everything. Karen tapped her manicured nails against her clipboard. "Mr. Ellison," she began, putting an emphasis on the formality, "you've requested to address the board under Article 9C. We'll allow 3 minutes. Marcus offered a polite smile and placed the Bluetooth speaker on the table in front of him. "Appreciated, I'll be brief." He turned to the residents seated behind him. Only 7 people, but enough. The word had spread fast. Most had never attended a board meeting. Tonight, they sat upright, alert, waiting. He hit play. Voice flooded the room. "We can't have people thinking they can do whatever they want just because they got city approval." A small gasp came from a man in the back row. "If we let this shed slide, the next thing you know, someone's putting up a pool. He's got to go." The recording ended in stunned silence. Karen's expression barely flinched. "That clip," she said icily, "was obtained illegally. It violates closed session policy." "I thought you might say that." Marcus opened his folder and slid a sheet across the table. According to county HOA transparency statutes, any board decision impacting a resident must be documented and made available upon request. I requested that transcript and was denied twice, so I found another way. He raised his voice slightly, letting it carry. "That meeting was where you conspired to initiate lien proceedings against me, despite my compliance with all city ordinances. That alone is enough to trigger a formal ethics violation under Section 8 of our HOA charter." Karen reached for her water bottle with a steady hand, but the mask was cracking. "And it doesn't end there," Marcus continued. He pulled out the second page and held it up. "Invoices billed by a vendor called Whitmore Maintenance LLC, over $82,000 in the last 2 years. All approved by the board president coincidentally, also named Whitmore." One of the board members, a younger man in glasses, leaned forward. "Karen, is that true?" She looked at him like he was a traitor. "We've always used that vendor. It's a trusted name." Marcus chuckled softly. "Trusted name, sure, except it doesn't exist. No crew, no office, just a mailbox. Registered to Karen Whitmore, 3 towns over. That's fraud, folks." Now, the gasps came more freely. A woman near the door raised her hand. "You mean? Our HOA dues went to her." Karen stood abruptly. "This is a smear campaign. He's angry over a shed." "I'm angry," Marcus interrupted, voice suddenly sharper, "because you weaponized your position to harass me, drive out families, and enrich yourself. You called the police on a legal shed. You tried to ruin me. And I'm not the first, but I'm the last." The younger board member slowly pushed his chair back. "I move to suspend President Whitmore from all duties pending a full audit." Another voice seconded. Karen's eyes darted, lips parted in disbelief. "You're making a mistake," she said. "He's manipulating you," but no one was listening anymore. The vote was called. For hands raised. Karen was out. As she stood frozen behind the table, Marcus finally turned to face her directly. "You wanted to control everything, but you never understood the one rule you couldn't bend." Karen blinked. "What rule?" Marcus smiled. "The one where the residents still have a voice." The following morning, the neighborhood buzzed like a stirred hive. Marcus stepped outside with his coffee to find neighbors he'd never spoken to waving from porches. Walking dogs passed his house more slowly than usual. He wasn't sure if they were grateful or curious, maybe both. The shed stood behind him like a monument now. Not just to his quiet defiance, but to everything Karen had tried to bury. By noon, Celeste had sent him a link to a local blog that had picked up the story. From a homeowner's post on social media, the title read, "HOA President Suspended Amid Fraud Allegations and Secret Audio Scandal." Karen hadn't been seen since the meeting. Her Lexus hadn't moved, and her porch light stayed off even after sunset. But Marcus knew better than to celebrate too early. Power didn't just dissolve, it retaliated. That evening, as he reviewed his emails, He noticed a strange alert in HOA system login attempt from an unknown IP address, then another. Someone was trying to access board records. Within minutes, he received a message from the temporary acting president, Trevor, the younger man from the meeting. Need your help. Files are missing. Marcus threw on his jacket and headed straight for the HOA office. The clubhouse lights were on. Trevor was there already, pacing with his tablet. She wiped the backups, he said without turning. Financials, complaint logs, vendor approvals, anything tying her to the maintenance companies is gone. Marcus leaned over the desk, thinking, she probably didn't delete them, just hid them. She needs them if she wants to cover her tracks or rebuild elsewhere. Check the shadow drive. If she had admin access, she could have used the sandbox folder to mask them. Trevor stared at him. You're good at this? I don't fight unless I plan to win. They worked past midnight. By the time they were done, not only had they recovered the files, but they found something not just about the shell companies, but messages Karen had sent to board members intimidating them, threatening to release fake misconduct reports. Even pictures of infractions she'd staged by planting items in neighbors' yards before. Photographing them, she didn't just abuse the rules, Trevor said slowly. She was running this place like a racket. Marcus knew the next move. The next morning, he filed a complaint with the county's HOA Oversight Committee and submitted a formal report to the district attorney's office. He included the audit logs, the emails, and the financial summaries. Celeste accompanied him, signing as a second resident witness. 2 days later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled quietly into Cedar Pines and parked outside Karen Whitmore's house. By the time word spread that she'd been charged with embezzlement and falsifying HOA documents, neighbors had gathered on sidewalks in small, silent clusters. No one cheered, but no one was sorry either. Karen stepped out of her house in oversized sunglasses and a stiff gray blazer, escorted to the cruiser by 2 deputies. She didn't look at Marcus, who stood across the street, arms crossed. She didn't have to. Knew. Later that evening, Trevor called with one last question. There's going to be a special election next month. We need someone to lead the cleanup. Someone people trust. I think it should be you. Marcus laughed dryly. I didn't come here to run a neighborhood. You didn't come here to be run out of it either. He hung up, walked out to his shed, and looked over the blueprints still pinned to the back wall. He hadn't touched them in weeks. Maybe it was time to redesign more than just buildings. Maybe it was time to rebuild the neighborhood itself. The next few weeks transformed Cedar Pines. The air, once taut with silent suspicion, now felt breathable. Lawn chairs reappeared on porches. Neighbors who used to walk briskly with their heads down now stopped for casual conversations. Children laughed in yards again. But Marcus felt no peace. Each day brought a new knock at his door, residents dropping off papers, asking for advice, even sharing stories about fines they had paid for violations that never existed. The numbers didn't lie. Karen's reign hadn't just been overreaching. It had been profitable. One homeowner, an elderly veteran named Bill Hanley, came with a stack of canceled checks. She charged me $150 every month for garage drainage compliance, he said. I don't even have a driveway slope. It was theft on a systematic scale. The special election loomed ahead like a freight train. Flyers went out. Marcus's name was at the top of every nomination list. Despite never campaigning, I didn't sign up for this, he told Celeste one afternoon as they walked the newly trimmed trail behind the clubhouse. No, she replied, but this place is what it is because people like Karen counted on the rest of us never stepping up. And you, well, you made it personal. That's the difference. That night, while reviewing some of the old HOA paperwork Celeste had stored in her attic, Marcus came across something strange, a scanned copy of the original Cedar Pines charter, dated 15 years prior. Most of the language was standard, legal boilerplate, but one section stood out. Developer holds master rights to architectural approvals and enforcement privileges, unless explicitly transferred to the HOA via certified deed. Marcus frowned. That wasn't normal. In most neighborhoods, developers dissolved control after a few years, passing full power to the elected HOA, but according to this document, the developer never transferred those rights. He flipped through the board meeting archives. There was no signed deed, no formal transition, only a vague reference in one of Karen's earliest memos. We assumed jurisdiction in full. He sat back, stunned. Legally, the HOA had never been granted enforcement authority. That meant every fine, every citation, every architectural restrictional and void. Karen hadn't just abused power, she'd never legally had it. Marcus double-checked county land records. The original developer, Fairview Holdings, had gone bankrupt 6 years ago. Their assets had been dissolved, some through tax liens. He typed quickly, cross-referencing land parcels and title records. Then he found it. Parcel number 014973. The master parcella, tiny sliver of land hidden on paper, but designated in the charter as the control parcel for enforcement authority. It had gone unclaimed. Sold at auction 2 years ago for $300. Marcus stared at the buyer's name, his own. He'd purchased the parcel unknowingly as part of a land bundle when buying his home buried in the paperwork under utility easements and residual lots. He owned the neighborhood's control rights. All of them. The implications hit him. Like a THUNDERCLAP. Karen had fought him over a shed, had called the police, tried to foreclose on his home, and now, she had never had any real power to begin with. But he did. Marcus stared at the deed printout like it might disappear. Parcel number 014973, control parcel. It was real. Legal, binding. A chill settled in his bones, not fear, but a cold, clear realization. Every fine, every citation, every shed regulation enforced over the past decade was based on like Karen hadn't just overstepped, she had built an entire HOA on sand. Marcus wasn't just a homeowner by accident, by buried deed, by legal default. He now owned the authority that governed the entire neighborhood. He closed his laptop and stood in the center of his shed. The quiet was deafening. Ideas collided in his head. He could dissolve the HOA, rewrite the rules, turn Cedar Pines into a haven for privacy-loving people tired of busybodies like Karen. Or he could weaponize the power. Do to Karen what she had done to others. Crush her with her own tactics. No, he'd come this far with restraint. He would finish it the right way. But first he needed confirmation. The next morning, Marcus met with a real estate attorney. She raised an eyebrow after reading the control deed. This changes everything. The HOA's architectural enforcement rights never legally existed without that parcel's transfer. You can invalidate every action they ever took. Can I dissolve the board? He asked. She tapped her pen thoughtfully. You can override it, reorganize it, or even make yourself the sole officer, if the residents vote on it. Marcus nodded slowly. Good. That night, he called a special community meeting. He didn't have to follow their procedures anymore. He was the procedure. Flyers went out, emails sent, word spread. By Saturday, nearly half the neighborhood showed up. Folding chairs filled the clubhouse, some people leaning against walls, others standing on tiptoe by the door. Marcus stood at the front, holding the same manila folder Karen once tried to dismiss him with. He opened with one sentence. The HOA never had the right to fine you. Gasps rippled. A couple exchanged confused looks. One woman dropped her coffee. He explained everything. The charter, the missing transfer, the buried parcel, and finally, that he had bought it accidentally, but had the deed in hand. You were threatened, cited, and controlled by a system that legally never had the power to act, he said. But we can fix that together. He offered them a vote, rebuild the HOA from the ground up, with clear boundaries and resident oversight, or dissolve it completely and live under county laws alone. It was nearly unanimous. Rebuild it, but with Marcus as president. He didn't celebrate. Not yet, because as the meeting dispersed, a woman near the back didn't move. Karen. She stepped forward, wearing the same peach blazer, only now the confidence behind her smile was gone, replaced with something darker. You think this is over? She said softly. You embarrassed me, humiliated me. But I still have friends. Marcus. The city. The zoning board. People you haven't even thought to worry about yet. He didn't flinch. You've lost. The neighborhood voted. Votes don't matter in court. She leaned in. I'm going to bury you in lawsuits. Civil, personal, municipal. You'll be bankrupt before you ever build another shed. He didn't say a word, just watched her walk away. But later that night, a rock crashed through his front window. Note, just glass. Then came the knock. 3 rapid hits on the door. Then silence. He opened it slowly, half expecting police. Instead, there was a man in a dark jacket standing beneath the porch light. Mr. Allison. The man said, you need to come with me. It's about the property lines, and something your HOA never told anyone. The man on Marcus's porch didn't introduce himself. He simply handed over a folded envelope and motioned toward the street, where a nondescript gray sedan idled with its engine running. Marcus hesitated. He wasn't used to being summoned, especially not like this. Who are you? He asked. The man looked past him, toward the house, then back. This isn't about the HOA anymore. It's about what Karen built on top of. That sentence was strange enough to make Marcus follow. The drive was short just outside Cedar Pines, to an old municipal records annex that Marcus didn't even know existed. The man led him inside and down a hall with humming fluorescents and dusty file cabinets. He finally stopped in front of a beige door labeled Archives Unincorporated Districts. This is what Karen didn't want anyone finding, the man said, unlocking the door. Inside were yellowed blueprints, zoning maps, and ancient land surveys. The man rifled through a drawer and pulled out a large, brittle parchment. This is your neighborhood, he said, tapping the center. Before it was Cedar Pines, it was called Clark Mill Estates, a failed housing project from the 1980s that was abandoned due to structural issues. Sinkholes, faulty drainage, unstable ground. He pulled out a second map. When the developers went bankrupt, they rebranded and reparceled the land built over the worst sections. That control parcel you own, it overlaps with a retention basin that was never capped properly. The HOA never reported it. Karen knew. Marcus studied the maps. The lines overlapped. Right through his shed. You're saying my property is on unstable ground. The man nodded grimly. That shed isn't just the center of your backyard. It's the bullseye of a liability Karen buried. And now that you've publicly assumed control, that liability is yours. Marcus felt his breath catch. It wasn't just about fines or power anymore. Karen hadn't come after him over aesthetics. She'd gone after him because if someone ever dug deep enough literally and legally, they'd discover the foundation she'd built everything on was a lie. He returned home with the documents in a tight grip. He spent the night scanning, cross-referencing, pulling every survey and plat he could find. At 2:13 a.m., something clicked. A set of subcontractor invoices Karen had filed under recreational improvements contained charges for fill dirt and cement barriers delivered to parcel number 014973. She hadn't ignored the sinkhole. She had covered it up literally. And now, thanks to the control deed, Marcus was the one liable for it. If anyone ever got hurt, if the land shifted, if erosion occurred, he would be responsible. The next morning, he received a certified letter, legal-sized heavy. Inside was a lawsuit, filed by Karen, defamation, emotional damages, wrongful interference, a civil suit designed not to win, but to drain him. Alongside it, a second document, a challenge to the legitimacy of his control deed, claiming it was purchased under misrepresentation. It was a full-on counterattack. And it was working. HOA board was panicking. Residents were emailing him daily, asking about rumors of insurance lapses, land value drops, liability zones. Karen hadn't just lost power, she was flipping the board upside down on her way out, lighting every fuse she could. Marcus sat at his shed's desk, staring at the blueprints of Cedar Pines one more time. There had to be a way to turn this around. He had the power now, he needed the leverage. And if Karen thought she could bury her past forever, Marcus was ready to start digging. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows, flashing cameras illuminated anxious faces, and the judge's gavel waited, heavy with the promise of judgment. Marcus stood calmly, his evidence folder, thick with years of documents, recordings, and legal findings. Across from him sat Karen Whitmore, her usual confident poise replaced by a mask of desperation. The lawsuit was more than a battle over slander. It was an attempt to wrest control, to challenge the legitimacy of Marcus's ownership of the control parcel and to shatter the fragile peace he had built. But Marcus had prepared for this moment like a general, plotting a siege. When the judge called the case, Marcus's attorney laid out a detailed timeline. Karen's secret shell companies, her fabricated violations, the forged HOA fines, all tied to a fraudulent system she created without legal authority. Then, Marcus revealed the hidden maps and engineering reports about the sinkhole and structural instability beneath Cedar Pines. He demonstrated how Karen had deliberately concealed these dangers, charging residents while ignoring potential catastrophe. The courtroom murmured. Defense faltered under relentless cross-examination. Experts testified to the financial and legal damages caused by her misconduct. Then came the final twist. Marcus pulled out a certified deed transfer document, an official county record showing that 2 weeks before Karen filed her lawsuit, she had secretly transferred her stake in the Whitmore Maintenance, LLC, to an offshore company. The very company profiting from these fraudulent contracts has been hidden from the public eye, Marcus declared. Karen attempted to shield her assets to evade liability. Faces in the courtroom paled. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Whitmore, do you deny these allegations? Karen's silence was deafening. The ruling was swift. Karen was found liable for multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and harassment. The court upheld Marcus's ownership of the control parcel and reaffirmed his right to reorganize. The HOA, the defamation suit, was dismissed. But the final blow came with the judge's order. Karen was banned from serving in any HOA or similar community governance for 10 years and ordered to pay restitution to affected homeowners. Outside the courthouse, neighbors gathered, clapping quietly for Marcus. He smiled, exhausted but triumphant. Back at Cedar Pines, Marcus wasted no time. He called an emergency meeting, announcing a new vision, a transparent, resident-led HOA focused on safety, fairness, and community, not control. He proposed a solar-powered community co-working space in a symbol of openness and innovation open to all residents, except Karen. The neighborhood rallied. Volunteers painted fences, fixed walkways, and planted gardens. Children played in the streets without fear of arbitrary fines. And Karen, she moved away quietly. Her name, a cautionary tale whispered in HOA meetings. Marcus sat on his porch one evening, watching neighbors wave and chat freely. His shed stood proud, not a symbol of defiance, but of victory for justice, for community, and for the right to own one's own backyard. Sometimes, he thought, a simple shed was all it took to change everything.